But anyway, okay, I want to start with the positive things. Actually, I want to disagree with Brian. No Child Left Behind is actually, even though it's incomplete, there's things to work with it. I actually agree with it. I think a slow nationalization of the education system is a great thing. China has it, India has it. I did my high school in India, and I learned much of the math and science that I'm learning in my sophomore year. I learned it back in the 10th grade. So much of the math and science education that I learned back when I was in India was basically taught here in college level. So people have a much greater access when you nationalize the system, when you have a minimum level of standard. Now, I know that there has to be some sort of local control, and I would cede that. And I think Bush helped a lot with AIDS in Africa. He did a lot of programs for that. And back here, he did a lot of faith-based initiatives, and he helped. One of the greatest things he did was he did mentoring for inner-city schools. And I agree also with the Medicare Part D. I think he did a good job on that. Okay, so going to the cons. Katrina, inefficiency, reckless tax cuts, massive spending, fraud. Iraq and Afghanistan, fraud over there. Neoconservatism, this idea that we can just, conquer the world. Empire, lobbyist access, deregulation, Rovian tactics, civil liberties. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. There's so much damage done by the past 8 years that it's going to take at least 2 to 3 years to even judge President Obama of how he does, because he has to clean so much mess. And my message to the GOP is, you created a mess. Grab a mop or shut up and sit down.
The second question of this general questions category will be, we are nearly 1 year into the Obama presidency. How would you rate his performance thus far?
I go first. I'd give him about a D plus, C minus. The one area where I have to say that I really like the direction he's gone is in education, and that he's talked a lot about creating more vouchers. I'm sorry, not vouchers, charter schools. I wish he would do vouchers, but you kind of have to find the middle ground. I think that charter schools are a good middle ground. And I also agree with him on Afghanistan, with the exception of the deadline of July 2011. But other than that, I can't really find much else to agree with him. I think that he's been ineffective in foreign policy. He's not attained American objectives throughout the world. I think that he has failed in economic policy, and that we still have 10% unemployment when we were told that it was going to be 8%. Where have those 2% of jobs gone? Millions of jobs we're talking about. Transparency, I don't think we really have had increased transparency. And he promised to change Washington, and I think he's actually changed it for the worse, because now instead of having the administration write the bills themselves, they're letting the likes of Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid write the bills. And I think you just have to listen to them speak in order to get the idea of how awfully bad idea that is. Let those two nut jobs run our government. But I digress. I think that Obama came in with a lot of promise and a lot of hype, and that just by nature, nobody could possibly fulfill it. And in one of his speeches, he said that when he won the Democratic nomination, people would look back and say that was the time when the waters in the ocean stopped rising. And it's just like, no, you can't do that, because global warming is a whole other topic. But the point is that you can't set those kind of standards for yourself and then expect to get a good grade at the end of the year. So that's what I have to say about that.
I'll give him a B, a solid B. So I have definitely a lot of problems with him. And I think I'm definitely in agreement with my Republican friend over here when it comes to education. He has done a really good job. Even though I'm a Democrat, I very much lean to the right when it comes to education. I want to make sure that there's more vouchers and that people have more access to private schools if they so choose. The thing is, there have been a lot of bills that he put within the span of 9 months. I think he's signed the 12 major bills that he's signed so far. Some of them are the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, where you have, to prevent gender discrimination. And I think there was the stimulus package, the $787 billion, which I think definitely has helped bring back the economy and bottoming out a recession. I think the Tobacco Prevention Act for kids that prevented the tobacco companies from basically advertising to youth, and basically, you can't have like a picture of a cartoon or a giraffe on a cigarette carton because you can't attract kids, stuff like that. I mean, important legislation that can help in our long-term public health. And of course, the healthcare reform. I think he made the right decision to delegate this to Congress and basically guide the process. And And when it comes to the international arena, he's been very, very helpful. He gave a major speech to the Muslim nations in Cairo, and I think he set a standard that there's not going to be the empire mentality anymore. We're not going to be patrons of you, but we're also going to be partners in promoting peace, in promoting equality, in promoting human rights. And he's been very clear on that issue. I think sum total, it's very hard to judge a president on 1 year. And you know, the polls go up and down. It was as such even with respect to Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan had his polls go down the first couple of years, but then it bounced back up because he showed some results after his policies. So I think it's important to put things in perspective. Wait at least a year more before we accurately can judge the president based on his policies.
So I think I'd probably give the same grade as Noah. I mean, I think depending on your political spectrum, you know, you'd probably make different decisions based on which way you're leaning. So I think, you know, Bharat probably would give him a B, and Noah and I would give him a C-D. And there are just some things that I wanted to talk about. And I think the overall sentiment I get from Obama is this lack of action, this lack of spine that he's creating with these policies. So like the first thing I want to talk about is the stimulus bill, and saying how I don't think the stimulus bill has actually created a situation where there's any kind of sustainable growth. I think digging holes and creating this quote-unquote infrastructure is creating a temporary solution to the problem, when in fact it's actually just, you know, it's making Americans feel better about themselves, when in fact it's not going to actually be beneficial in the long run because it's not containing any kind of sustainable jobs in place. And with sustainable jobs, with that being said, I think also the cap and trade bill issue was also a bad idea. I think at this point, you know, despite what your scientific leanings are, whether or not you agree with global warming or if you don't agree with global warming, I think the risking of jobs that is created, I think it's about 2.5 jobs for every 2.5 jobs are lost for every green job that is created. And I think at this point, we can't be putting ourselves in a situation where we need jobs in other industries in order to save ourselves from this economic downturn. The other thing I want to talk about is also this idea of the healthcare bill. I think Obama's clear intention is actually to create a system where you're going to have this where you essentially eliminate the private choice and create this more and have more emphasis on the public choice. So I think with the healthcare bill, if he's going to be a Democrat and he's going to be implementing these policies, I think he should just take a stand and say that I want this, and as opposed to putting the entire nation under this. Also, last thing with Afghanistan, I think you can really show his lack of experience in his decision, because he had to wait 3 months to make a decision on Afghanistan. And I think even if you agree or disagree with it, I think he should have been much more of a backbone in sending these troops to Afghanistan if he did not do it in the first place.
All right, thank you very much. The last question in this category: has Obama upheld his pledge to change, in quotes, the way business is done in Washington?